Patch 14.22 is another huge patch with plenty of champion and balance changes to cover. So today let's dive into it and see how all of these changes affect our tier list. As always, we'll start off with the top lane, and in the S tier we have Aatrox, Darius, Dr. Mundo, Kennen, Malphite, Riven, Shen, Tahm Kench and Zac. Alawi's nerfs move her down to the B tier this patch. Mordekaiser's nerfs keep him in the A tier for now, Aurelia's and Kael's buffs move them up to the A tier too, and Rumble's buffs bring him back up from C to B. Jax moves down from the S tier with his nerfs, Shen moves out of the God tier but stays in the S tier with his, Aatrox also stays in the S tier despite his nerfs, but Poppy moves down from S to A with yet another nerf to try and stop her from being such a dominant support pick so far this season. More importantly though, you saw that correctly, Tahm Kench has moved up to the S tier. He has been winning a ton of games recently, and his win rate has just kept climbing up and up along with his popularity. So it's time to unbench the Kench if you haven't already. Darius has definitely been one of the strongest champions you can play in the top lane in recent weeks too, which I'm sure you all already know about, whether you're abusing it or getting abused by it. This guy has always been scary in solo queue, but right now he's back to his best. Aurora is still terrorizing games in high elo and proving that she's one of the most dominant lane bullies in the game, with crazy early game damage and insane snowballing power. So get fed early, W into a team, press your ultimate, GG. Cho'Gath has also been climbing up the ranks recently and being played a lot more too. His stats are looking pretty crispy and he's actually not that far off the S tier right now, so keep an eye out for him. Ryze is another surprising top laner who's starting to show up more often now, and when you look at how he's performing, he's pretty impressive. His win rate has been growing in both of the solo lanes, and for a champion that's always been OP in pro play or completely irrelevant in solo queue, maybe he's found that gap to start popping off it. Teemo is another strong A+ tier pick that nearly made it into the S tier this week. He's had a few buffs recently when he was already pretty good, and now he's actually performing super well across every single rank. Don't forget there's still also a ton of players who insta-lock Teemo when they're tilted, bringing down those stat numbers. So if the stats are that high, that only means he's even better than you might think. Now let's get into the jungle then, and in the S tier we have Graves, Jarvan, Kayn, Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, Lilia, Nocturne, Nunu, Viego, Warwick and Zac. Briar's and Wukong's buffs move them up to the A tier this patch. Udyr moves down to the A tier with some pretty huge nerfs to his R, and Lilia also gets nerfed again, but she stays in S for now. Maokai also gets some buffs for the first time in a while, so he's joining the B tier. Wukong's buffs could be really interesting though, because years ago now when he did receive some changes, it was his W's cooldown being so low that was part of why he was so OP. And now with Riot buffing that ability and buffing its cooldown, he could rise back up into the S tier again. We're going to go for the A tier for this week for now, but he's definitely one to watch out for, as when this champion is strong in the jungle, he's often a really popular pick in every single rank. Speaking of popular picks, Jarvan is one of the most consistent and reliable ganking junglers you can play right now. He can literally gank from as early as level 2. Walk into a lane, EQ your enemy, if they don't have flash, they're dead. It's as simple as that. Jarvan is both a solid skirmisher but also a fantastic initiator too, so there really isn't too many drafts you can't pick him into. Another incredibly popular pick is of course Lee Sin. And for one of the funnest champions in the game to play, well in my opinion at least, when he's strong, the jungle is a lot more fun. It's safe to say that Lee Sin is dealing a lot of damage at the moment, and all it takes is for him to get a few kills in the early game to get that eclipse early before he starts running around the map, dashing and diving and one-shotting everything he sees. So if you are good enough and you enjoy him, just keep playing him, because he's in a great spot. If you want to just sit there and snowball your games instead, you're going to need to try Nunu. He keeps bouncing between the A and the S tier over the last few patches, and now we're going to keep him in the S tier again for this patch. Of course you can play him with the bursty AP build, but it's actually his tanky setup that is winning the most amount of games. So clear those first few camps, get stuck in for those early ganks and start rolling your way to free LP. If you're looking for a slightly different jungle pick to play, then you can't go wrong with Echo. He takes a bit more practice to learn and master, but when you get the hang of him, his carry potential is absolutely crazy. The damage he can deal when he gets a few items is absurd, and before you know it you're dashing and flashing into backlines, one-shotting enemy carries and ulting back out to safety again. Speaking of flashing onto enemy carries though, Skarner is still one of the strongest picks you can play in the jungle in high elo. He's not a weak pick in the majority of ranks, but it's just those top players that can really abuse it. He's in the S tier for the high elo jungle tier list, which you can check out on our website, and we've got him in the A tier for this one, which covers the majority of the player base. Right, well now let's get into the mid lane. And in the S tier we have Ahri, Anivia, Cassiopeia, Hui, Katarina, Lux, Sylas, Syndra and Vex. Fizz's buffs this week move him up from B to A. We think Katarina's buffs might be a little bit on the strong side for those one-trick ponies, so she moves up to the S tier, and then Swain's buffs move him from B to A. We've also got a few nerfs to some S tier picks like Sylas, Anivia and Syndra, but we are going to keep them all in the S tier for now. They've been super strong so far this split, and these nerfs don't feel like they're quite enough to be too damaging for them. Corki also gets nerfed after an extremely dominant patch, so we're moving him down from S to A. The low elo pub stomping solo carry mid lane machine that is Fizz might just make a return this patch with the buffs. He's always been one of those champions that can completely snowball and dominate games once he gets an early lead, but he has been a bit lackluster recently. This patch though, Riot have buffed his Q's AP ratio and the damage over time ratio on his W as well, so get ready to see a lot more of him. Speaking of solo carry machines, Katarina could make a huge comeback this week, and that's why we've predicted her to bounce straight back up into the S tier. With the cooldown buffs on her E and her ultimate, these could actually be pretty crazy. So make sure you watch out for those one-trick ponies, because it's safe to say there's quite a few of them. If instead you just want to play the most consistent mid laner and one of the most popular mid laners to play in recent weeks, you can't go wrong with Ahri. She's one of the most versatile mid laners in the game. She works into so many different matchups and team comps, and she's always useful with her mobility and her catch potential. If you get super fed, you can dash through backlines and one-shot enemy carries in seconds. Or if you don't get fed, just play for charms instead. Lux has also been a great pick to play in the mid lane recently, with endless wave clear, fantastic burst and great pick potential too. So make sure you don't forget about her either. Swain's mini rework hasn't really hit the ground running so far, and he was a bit too undertuned last patch on release. This week he's had a bunch of buffs though, which is why we've moved him up from B to A. At some point soon, Swain is definitely going to be broken. We're just not quite sure this is the patch. So let's see how he performs when the patch goes live, and reflect back in our updated tier list video in a few days' time. If you don't like any of these AP picks we've just mentioned or any of the AP picks in the tier list and you want an AD assassin to play, then you need to try Talon again. Talon mains are having fantastic results again after his recent buffs, and although his stats aren't anything groundbreaking, he's definitely a lot better than most people give him credit for. So if you like one-shotting carries, roaming around the map at the speed of light, and dominating every single lane all at once, then give Talon a try. Let's move down to the bot lane now then and have a look at some AD carries. In the S tier we have Ashe, Caitlyn, Jinx, Kog'Maw and Seraphine. We've got some nice buffs to Varus and Vayne this patch, so they've both moved up from B to A. Jhin and Corki both moved down from S to A, with some other picks like Ashe, Caitlyn and Jinx just looking like they're going to be the strongest options here. Kog'Maw continues to be a draft specific but completely OP pick in the right games, with both his on-hit setup and his AP burst build both winning tons of games. The changes to Yontar Wild Arrows and Static Shiv this week are definitely going to have an impact on the meta though. And as far as our predictions go, Wild Arrows sounds like it might be pretty OP, and Static Shiv sounds pretty much the opposite. If Wild Arrows is as strong as it sounds, it might just end up defining the meta, with Jinx probably being the biggest winner here, which is about the right time because Arcane is about to pop off again. Jinx has already been S tier recently, but now this item gives attack speed, an attack speed steroid, and stacking crit. It could be a match made in heaven for her and her minigun. Caitlyn has been extremely contested and absolutely popping off in high elo recently. It really is all about the burst damage she can deal with her traps and Qs and headshots. And with that Collector into Infinity Edge build, she's proving extremely hard to beat. Caitlyn has always been a bully in the lane phase, but when she spikes this hard, it's very easy to understand just why she's so popular and why she's winning so many games. Ashe has definitely been the most consistent AD carry though recently, and this doesn't look like it will slow down anytime soon. She just doesn't really have a weak period in her game right now. She's strong in the lane phase with pokes and slows, she's good in the mid game with CC and kite and everything else, and in the late game she has some of the best scaling too. So if you want to switch off your brain and just lock in the same champion game after game after game, start maining Ashe. We're really interested to see if Vayne can make a bit of a comeback this patch though. She's been a little bit absent for quite some time now, and despite there being so many tanks in the meta, there's still too much long range burst and CC to prevent Vayne from doing her thing. Let's be honest, her weakness is and will always be wave clear, and that isn't going to change this patch. But maybe that extra bit of damage on her ultimate allows her to focus on dueling and fighting more often and coming out on top in more games. Draven Masters are still having great results too, so make sure you don't forget about him either. He's still one of the most banned champions in this role, and let's be honest, he always has been. But with his stats steadily increasing across the majority of ranks, especially in Platinum and above, if you do enjoy him and you know how to play him well enough, he's still a great choice. Okay, well let's finish off with the supports then, and in the S tier we have Braum, Janna, Lulu, Nami, Poppy, Rel, Senna, Tahm Kench and Thresh. Yes, that's right, Tahm Kench is here as well, also having some crazy stats over the last few weeks, along with Braum, who's proving to be an amazing pick in the right games. Lulu continues to be one of the strongest enchanters you can play, and with Jinx being so strong and maybe getting even stronger, she's going to continue to dominate the support S tier. Blitzcrank's buffs to his E bring him up from B to A, and Poppy is going to stay in the S tier despite more nerfs to her base AD. Karma is a surprisingly strong A tier option to consider. She's actually super strong in the lane phase as she has so much to bring to 2v2s with her constant poke, her relentless shields, and her W just being able to simply abuse flashless enemies. She's also a super versatile pick that you can play with pretty much any bot laner. So if you aren't sure who to play and need some utility, just pick Karma. We're super intrigued to see how the Vel'Koz buffs make a difference this patch, because there's not really too many people that do play him, but people that can play him perfectly are already having great results, and this is only going to get better with his buffs. Now, we definitely wouldn't advise trying him and first timing him in solo queue, because you might get a ping or two. But if you do have the experience to play him and you know how to poke and use that geometry to your advantage, he could be even better this patch. On the flip side though, if you don't want to be a pokey mage and you just want to be a creative playmaker, Rakan is one of the most enjoyable and one of the most impactful supports that you can go for. The best thing about Rakan is how understated and underrated he is. Not really too many people at the majority of ranks really play him because they don't really understand just how perfect he can be into so many different team comps. But as you go towards higher ranks, you can see that his popularity just increases because they understand how much you can abuse his skill ceiling to set up fights, CC your enemies, and carry games from this role. Speaking of carrying from the support role, Nami might not be as flashy as the likes of Thresh or Pyke, but the way she slots into simply any bot lane matchup, any team comp, any draft, she's always useful with her abundance of CC and utility. She makes high damage marksmen even more bursty with her E. She's got slow, she's got heal, she's got crowd control, she really does have it all. So if you aren't playing her already, why not? Sona's stats recently have also been really surprising. Her win rate is actually much higher than people realise, and when you break it down into the basics, it's quite obvious to see as to why. She might not seem that threatening in the lane phase, but it's all about her sustain and scaling. And in the late game, there's not actually that many better champions that can be so simple but so effective. So give her a go if you haven't recently. One champion we don't really speak enough about here is Nautilus, but season after season, he's always one of the most contested support picks in the game. He's got the widest hook on the planet, amazing pick potential, and super reliable CC with his ultimate. So don't stress too much about the stats with him. If you need CC, if you need picking power, just play him anyway, especially if you have the right AD carry alongside you. And that's going to bring us to the end of our patch 14.22 tier list prediction video. Don't forget to click the link below to see the full tier list on our website and stay up to date with the meta as it shifts and changes. Thank you all for watching as always, and we'll see you next time. Take care.